Hi, my name is Danny Fisher. Last time we went over some very basic things about Commander and Magic the Gathering and how to make it a competitive deck. Today, we'll be going over a little bit more in detail. We'll be going over how Magic cards are priced, what cards to spend your money on, tips to get around that. We'll go over some very basic rules. We'll go over how to make your deck competitive in a more step-by-step manner. First, we'll go over different ways Magic cards are priced, how to tell whether that card is expensive or not, and how to save a little bit of money when buying your cards. So for example, Toxic Deluge is a foil, as you can see, which will make it more expensive. Toxic Deluge is also not printed as often and is a very powerful card in the Commander format, making it a more expensive card. Arcane Signet is a card that was printed fairly new. It is very powerful in the format, therefore it does hold a significant value. Esper Sentinel is very, very powerful in the format. It is also printed very recently as well, making it very expensive. Cards like Wilderness Reclamation could be very good in most decks, however, certain decks will find it more powerful. Cards like Willbreaker, this card is not going to be very expensive, for it doesn't work in a lot of decks, but the decks that it does work in are going to be very strong. Shielded One, Whispering One, this card is a mythic rare, as you can see here by the orange symbol, is very rare to get, and is also not printed very often and is very powerful in the format. Cards like Sol Ring, this card is printed all the time. Every new Commander deck comes with a Sol Ring and is very powerful, but still holds a firm value at around $4 to $5. One really good way to get around spending a lot of money on Magic cards is knowing what cards go well in your deck, not just getting the expensive ones because they're more powerful. For example, my Commander is Kenrith, the Returned King. He's got a bunch of abilities printed on him, therefore I'm going to want to use a lot of land a lot of the time. Therefore, a really not expensive card like Wilderness Reclamation, untapping all my lands for a second use each turn, will prove more valuable to my Commander than others. Next, we'll go over some of the basic rules of the game. First, you're going to start your game with a 99 card deck and one Commander that sits on the side. The colors that are printed on your Commander are the colors of cards that you can have in your 99 card deck. Typically, in the top left corner here, you see the 4 colorless and 1 white symbol. This will be the color that is required in your Commander deck. So he would only be able to use white. However, since Kenrith, the Returned King, has 5 abilities printed under his card that show all 5 colors, Kenrith is a 5-color Commander. Let's go over the turn order. Each turn goes in this order exactly. You have your untap, upkeep, and then draw. Main phase 1, combat phase, main phase 2, and then we have the end step. Untap means that you will untap all your lands for a second use, untap all your creatures for use again, and then draw. Draw your card off the top of your deck. Main phase 1, you'll play sorcery speed spells, which is any spell that isn't an instant, however you can play instants in this turn. Then you go to combat. Combat is where you can use your creatures that have not been summoned this turn to attack your different opponents. Your opponents may block with their creatures as long as that creature is untapped. If that creature is tapped, it cannot block. Then we go to a second main phase where you can cast more sorcery speed spells before your end step. Your end step is indicating the end of your turn. At the beginning of your very first turn, you're going to want to draw 7 cards off the top of your deck. You want to have at least 3 to 4 lands in your opening hand, for you can play 1 land per turn. Tapping indicates that you're using that land, and each of your next turns you'll untap all of your lands for another use. If you don't like your first 7 cards, you can take what is called a mulligan, where you take your hand, you shuffle it back into your deck, draw 7 more cards, and then you put 1 card from your hand on the bottom of your deck. If you decide to mulligan again, you do this, but then it's 2 cards at the bottom of your deck. Cards like Kenrith here, if he is your Commander, he sits on the side of the board, and you can play him anytime that you can cast him. Any cards that are not instant speed spells are sorcery speed spells. So creatures, enchantments, artifacts, and lands will all be sorcery speed. Sorcery means that it must be played on your turn and not as an interrupt to other players' spells. Now we'll get into using lands. We'll go back to Kenrith as an example. So Kenrith requires 4 colorless and 1 white. This means that you must use 4 lands of any color, it doesn't matter, and 1 white land. Now for his abilities here, they say use some mana and the color to do that certain ability. Since the symbol doesn't indicate a tapping motion, that means that you can continue to use his abilities for as long as you have the mana. Cards like Sol Ring here, you can see is a tap symbol. This means that you'd only be able to use it once during each turn, of your turns that is. After your combat phase, there is an additional main phase. This lets you play additional sorcery speed spells before the end of your turn. The end of your turn is indicated by the end step. Some cards will have printed abilities on them that will say at the beginning of your end step, do certain ability. Now we'll get into a little bit more detail on about how to build your commander deck. In your commander deck, you're going to want 99 cards following the suit of your commander. In your 99 cards, you're going to want lands. Lands, you're going to want around 35 to 37, depending on what kind of deck you're running. If your deck has more higher cost cards, you're going to want to run more lands. Then you're going to want ramp. Ramp lets you get mana out faster than your opponents, letting you cast your bigger spells faster than them. This, you're going to want around 7 to 12. It's a toss-up for how much land you're going to need in your deck. Then you're going to want targeted removal. Targeted removal typically will destroy your opponent's cards. Targeted removal you're going to want around 5 to 7. Then you're going to want card advantage. Card advantage is going to get you more cards out of your deck faster than your opponents, therefore giving you more opportunities and choices. Card advantage you're going to want 10 to 13. Then you're going to want mass removal. Mass removal will typically get rid of everything on the board. This example, we have all creatures get -X until end of turn, where X is the life you pay. Massive land or mass destruction, you're going to want 2 to 3. Then you're going to want cards that synergize very well with your commander. Synergistic cards, you're going to want around 27 to 30. Now let's go over what is commonly referred to as your mana curve. Your mana curve is going to be your differential numbers of 1 drops, 2 drops, 3 drops, 4 drops, 5 drops, and so on. For 1 drops, you're going to not want as many. So let's say you're going to want 3 to 5 1 drops, hopefully making it so that you play a 1 drop at least once every 2 games. Then you're going to want 2 drops. 2 drops are going to be a bigger number than the 1 drops. 2 drops are going to be typically around 6 to 7. 3 drops, you're going to want from around 10 to 12. Your 3 drops should be around the bulk of your deck, right next to 4 drops, which should be around the same as 3 drops. 5 drops and up, these are the cards that are going to win you the game. 5 and up should take up about 16 to 15 cards. And with that, we went over how Magic cards are priced, ways to get around it, different ways to save money when buying Magic cards. We've went over some basic rules of the game, and we've even went over the step-by-step process on how to make your deck Commander competitive. Thank you. Hi, my name is Danny Fisher. Last time we went over some very basic things about Commander and Magic the Gathering and how to make it a competitive deck. Today, we'll be going over a little bit more in detail. We'll be going over how Magic cards are priced, what cards to spend your money on, tips to get around that. We'll go over some very basic rules. We'll go over how to make your deck competitive in a more step-by-step manner.